Welcome to the Time to Grow Up Dad podcast. I'm going to try to be more consistent with things, and in true fashion, I've actually got some notes prepared so that I don't just whiffle on topics, because I realize that listening to some of the older topics and even looking at some of my YouTube videos, I tend to whiffle a lot. So I've just got some notes here to kind of keep me on track of what I want to talk about today. And this episode is about balance, and it's actually an episode or a topic that I've kind of come to a realization, especially in the last 5 to 6 years, that balance is very much a lie. And I really want to make sure my kids understand this, that I want them to feel that they have a balanced life as they grow up, but I also want them to understand that balance is not something that is 50-50 in life. I truly believe, and I actually wrote this down here, that the world is full of trade-offs. And what you're willing to do less or do more of is going to allow you to feel this sense of balance in life. Feeling a sense of balance in life is not the same as having a balanced life. What most people try is to have this weird thing where everyone has seen the graph before, or this Venn diagram of social and work and rest, and in that little middle part of the Venn diagram is where you achieve balance. But the truth of the matter is, as most people realize, is that you can have 2 out of the 3, you can't have all 3 at the same time. And yet, we do know that there are people out there who are willing to sacrifice certain parts of their life. And when you ask them something, they're like, yeah, like my life is pretty balanced. I actually feel really, really good. And I'm very, very happy with all the sacrifices and trade-offs that I've made. So I truly believe that balance is not trying to maintain everything at equilibrium, is what you are willing to sacrifice. And a lot of it is trade-offs. And it's something, a bit of a conversation I'm going to probably have with my kids at some point. Because we know this as parents. There are going to be times where they need to do more schoolwork, or they need to go out, they need to do certain things, and they can't just always be staying at home. And then on the flip side of that, there's also going to be situations where, for example, like a holiday, they have to have a holiday. They can't just sit down and study. They need to go out and explore and have fun. So again, point being, it's all about trade-offs. And imagine that there is a seesaw. And on one end of the seesaw, you've got this brick. It's like a kilogram of bricks. And on the other end of the seesaw, you've got a kilogram of feathers. Like this example that we've always heard of, right, in physics. And the brick is a lot denser, and the feathers are a lot lighter. So just in this working example here, the feathers are the metaphorical depiction of working hard, grinding hard, putting in the effort, putting the work in. You need a lot of this work and grind in order to yield some type of result. For example, for fat loss or health improvements, you can't just exercise for a week or diet for a week. You need to actually work on it for 12, 16 weeks, sometimes months and years, in order to see some type of tangible result. And even with work, for example, if you're trying to build a business, or you're trying to, climb the social corporate hierarchy, it's not just going to happen in a month. Some businesses take decades to get to where they are. And even for promotions, it doesn't happen every month. It tends to happen annually, sometimes 2 to 3 years, and some people don't even get promoted. So you need a lot of this work to get things done. And again, the metaphorical feathers here is that they're going to stack up. There's going to be more feathers on one side of the scale. Again, ultimately, you need to do a lot of things to yield some type of result. The cool part about it is that if you do enough of work, or hard work, or grinding, whatever you want to call it, consistently, you're going to get results, right? And that's the reality of putting in the hard work. But once you start stacking these hustle, these grinds, these feathers on this metaphorical scale, what you start to see is that all of these hard work that you've put in is going to yield you something that you might call an achievement that you're proud of. And the feeling of dopamine, the feeling of success, the feeling of hard work pays off is pretty nice. This is where it gets tricky, because this is where burnout starts to happen. And this is where the whole idea of balance starts to kind of fall apart, because when you start achieving things and success in financial, personal, family, whatever it might be, the rush of dopamine of success entices you to want to do more because you want to climb that next mountain. And we say this a lot, right? Like, you get to the peak of the mountain, you want to get to the next peak. You want to see what's beyond there, and you want to start working towards that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the more work you put in, the more of these feathers you start stacking up, eventually this scale is going to tip. It's going to get to a point where it's not a kilo of bricks versus a kilo of feathers. It's going to get to a point where it's 2 kilos of feathers and 1 kilo of bricks. And so the scale starts to tip towards the side of the feathers. And as people work more and more or grind harder at the thing that yields some result, even though it takes time, these results still feel good. It's tangible. You succeed. It feels almost immediate compared to the metaphorical brick, which represents rest and recover. And I can assure you this, when you tell someone to rest and recover and take a break, or go on a holiday, or change jobs because that job's not worthwhile, basically anything that requires you to pull back, most people are afraid to do so because it almost seems like it doesn't yield any result. Working hard for extensive periods of time in any facet of life, work, health, fitness, for example, a 16-week fat loss program, you see a result at the end by putting the work in. But how many people, let's stick with the fitness industry example for a second, see results by taking time off? It's so weird. Imagine telling someone to take time off, they're not going to see the result. Most people can't slow down. And in this modern age, slowing down is so hard because it just means something is just, the effort's just not there. You're just not putting in the work. It's easier to just go fast. It's easier to grind. It's easier to put the work in because at some point, by putting in all this hard work and all this sacrifice and all this blood, sweat, and tears, there's going to be some outcome. Slowing down doesn't yield any type of positive result, at least not results that people can sort of tangibly feel, unless if they're burning out. So take working out again, for nutrition, there are things like breaks and deloads. For example, for powerlifters, after 6 weeks or after 4 to 6 weeks of hard training, there tends to be a deload, and even in other types of sports. Or if we look at dieting, you might do an 8-week cut followed by 1 to 2 weeks of a diet break to kind of help reset the mentality, bring back some sense of psychological stability when you're so deep in a deficit. And sometimes it feels so counterintuitive. It feels counterintuitive. Why do we need to eat more during a fat loss phase? Why do we need to take a more relaxing week when we are making gains? Why do we need to slow down when we are making progress? Same thing in life. And as a parent, I see this, right? Every quarter, let's say you own a business and you hit your KPIs. Are you going to slow down next quarter? Even though you feel like you're burning out, You know that the advice is to slow down next quarter because you've hit all the KPIs, you've grinded really, really hard, and you need to slow down, and yet many of us don't. An example I like to use with children and me observing children and my own children in playgrounds is learning a new skill. So you take them to a playground, they start to figure out how to climb a ladder, they start to figure out how to go down a slide. They're like, oh, cool, this is amazing. I love the feeling of a slide. And they go down the slide, they climb the ladder again, and they go down the slide, and they climb the ladder again, and they go down the slide. And then they start to think, and this happens, just observe it as a parent, just observe this if you have kids, or just observe this. They start going quicker. They start taking more reckless steps on the stairs to get to the top. They start rushing down the slide a lot quicker, and then they start running to the stairs again, and then they go up, and then they slide down again. Because the quicker that they can perform these actions, the more actions that they perform, the rush down the slide is going to be more frequent. I can go 2 more times if I just run a little bit quicker, if I just skip a step on the stairs or on the ladder, whatever it might be, whatever they're climbing, right? And then eventually what happens? They fall down, they injure themselves, they cry, bad stuff happens. That's the analogy of like not understanding that sometimes you need to slow down. Now, of course, they're kids, and of course, as parents, we need to teach them why they need to slow down. But as adults, we're almost guilty of saying that to children. We don't actually do that ourselves. Another example here is bedtime. And I know parents who have kids know this. When it's time to bedtime, when it's time for bedtime, it's like a war zone. You're trying to figure out how to calm them down. They start running around and you're like, oh, stop running around, like, calm down, it's time for bed, it's time to relax, it's time to unwind. You can see it in their eyes. They're yawning, their eyes are teary, and you're kind of going, hey, like, we got to slow down, we got to slow down, we got to slow down, we need to get to bed. And then we put them to bed, and we come out of their room, and we open up our laptop or computer, and we start trying to finish more work. I'm guilty of this. Do as I say, not as I do. That is a horrible line for parents, because kids model you, as much as I hate to admit. And some might say, well, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But how much of that grind are you willing to make to work extra hours, late hours, until one day your kid is pretty grown up and they come to you and say, oh, why are you working at 10 p.m.? Why are you telling me to go to sleep? You're not asleep. What's your rationale? And the problem with working hard, so again, with the seesaw, with the brick side of things, the slow down, the wind down, the intentional moments to take a break, if that is not taken seriously, kids and as adults in multi facets, multi areas of life, work, health, fitness, maybe a side hustle, even parenting. If we don't take slowing down seriously, things are going to go really, really bad. And the common term that we used to hear as adults at least, or young adults, is burnout. Think of the standard school model. There are school terms and there are holidays, even university. There's study terms and there's holidays. School is work for kids and for those who are in uni. It's the equivocal for going out to work and grinding really hard at whatever that you want to do as an adult. And that's the same thing for kids, like school, that's pretty much it. Kids go in there, they learn hard, they learn new skills, science, physics, math, philosophy, history, languages. They learn playground politics, social hierarchies, who's the teacher, who to suck up to, who to not suck up to. You start to see which managers are crap, what type of work that you need to do, what's the task list, which boss you need to suck up to more, the new software that's just came out and you have to learn that. See like how they're all related? Like school is pretty much work for kids and it's synonymous to what work is for to adults. And then when it's time to have a break, like a school break or a term break, it's almost a way to balance out the craziness of school. But here's the thing. School term breaks are planned. You can look up on Google and you can see like when those breaks are. But where in a year as an adult have you consistently scheduled intentional time away from work and life and just to relax? I'm guilty of this. I haven't. Last year, the excuse was newborn. This year, the excuse is I need to get more work done. And I'm guilty. And I'm not gonna sit here and say like, I've scheduled anything. I haven't. It is in the back of my mind. It is on my task list to schedule a holiday. And I've actually talked to my parents about it, but I haven't actually done it. And I still think it is important to make that a priority, to slow down. And there are so many examples out there, good authors, books, YouTube videos that, even famous people have preached the idea of slowing down and the intentional and the idea of slowing down. And it's become more and more and more obvious to me that if you are just putting your head down and work, unless if you are David Goggins, you are going to crash and burn very, very quickly. So one thing that I've been trying to do in my own personal life to kind of slow down is to force myself to get back into the habit of reading. I used to love to read. Audiobooks was a thing when the kids came, and then it slowly went away due to multiple reasons. I'm not going to point fingers, it's really my fault. And so I've got back into reading and I realized there are actually a few books that I come back to over the years. And one of the books is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And it's such a great book. There are other books that I usually recommend to most people to read because I know people of my age, young adults, reading almost becomes like a lost skill. So I've came up with 10 books that I would recommend you to read, from fiction to non-fiction to books that you don't even need to read cover to cover. You could literally just open, read a page and close. I've come up with 10 books, I've put them all in a list. If you want this list, just head to the link. I'll put the link somewhere or on my bio. You can check it out. I highly recommend getting back into reading as a form to decompress and to relax. It forces you to do something that you probably haven't done in a long time. And I highly encourage, if you'd like to read just one book this year, if that was like a goal, just pick one out of the 10. I can guarantee you can't go wrong. But that's also why I got back into reading, because I was asking myself, why am I burning out? At the start of the year, 2026, January, I was burning out hard. And I was asking myself, why am I burning out? And I also wonder why kids crash out at the end of the day, or, after a long day, they just explode. We blame the overloaded schoolwork for kids or overstimulation of everything in the world, which is true, but yet as adults, we don't blame we've got too much work. Maybe we do, but we don't consider to maybe reorganize things. We don't blame the fact that we go into social media and try to overstimulate ourselves with content, and then we get to the end of the day feeling like we are completely drained. We don't even realize during the weekends, and I know some of you hustlers, business owners, working on the weekends is a thing, but the weekends is a time to recharge. If you're someone who works 7 days a week, personal experience, it's going to suck. It can work for a while, but it's not going to last very, very long. The weekend is a time to recharge. It's very important, and it's something I tell a lot of my clients, myself, and I make it a point. At least one day in the week, don't work. Ideally, have a planned holiday, but at least if you can't plan a holiday, just make sure you at least plan a weekend to recharge. Very much like planning downtime for kids, you need to plan downtime for an adult. And downtime doesn't just mean scrolling on social media, it just means like doing things that take you away from the high stimulation, high stress of life, so that you can kind of come back and go at it again on the Monday. Breaks, either weekends or holidays, if scheduled correctly, yields wonders. And we know this. Most of us cannot take a forever holiday. I wish we could, just live in the Bahamas for the rest of our life. But even a 1 week break, a 3-day getaway, just feels like a 3-month getaway, especially for those who have been working so hard all along. It allows you to recharge and get back to work for a longer period of time after the holiday, and if timed correctly again, might just give you the ability to just avoid burnout. You might be on the tip of burning out, you take a holiday, you come back, you feel good, and you go again. As long as you're taken seriously again, are the breaks shorter than a grind lifestyle itself? Usually it is, right? Your breaks are not going to be really long. Your breaks are a lot shorter than comparing to the time you would work, let's say in a year. You might take maybe a month off in a year versus the other 11 months of working really hard. But that's kind of the point. The analogy of the brick versus the feathers on that little seesaw, you don't need a lot of breaks or time offs. You just need to schedule them properly, because breaks and time offs are so dense like a brick. It can almost counterbalance and sometimes off balance the other end, where I was using the analogy of feathers being the grind and the working hard of the feathers. You need a lot of that to produce some type of result, but a dense holiday / brick, in this case, can help to kind of tip the scale a little bit. And I guess this is where we always think about balance equals sustainability. And it's like a sustainability trap. We get into this lifestyle and we think that we could sustain it, we could work this insane hours because we feel all right. Think of it this way. You had to get to the airport. Would you rather walk to the airport or take a car? Let's assume that you can physically walk to the airport and you can get there. Most of us would take the car. Now here's the important part. With taking a car, there has to be some upfront cost. Fuel is pretty expensive these days. You need to drive, you need to sit in traffic. I guess the point here is taking the car gets you from point A to point B quicker, but there has to be an initial surge of effort. You need to put in the effort. You need to, I guess with work, you need to sacrifice your sanity. You need to actually put your head down and work hard and feel like crap some of the time. But it gets the job done quicker rather than slow and steady as if walking to the airport. The problem though isn't trying to sprint. In this case, taking the car is sprinting from point A to point B, walking is just taking a stroll. The problem isn't the initial investment of a lot of upfront costs to sprint to point B in the car. The problem is poor planning, or the inability to say enough is enough and catching yourself to realize that there has to be an endpoint. For example, poor planning would be trying to sprint while sitting in traffic. It's frustrating. Same thing with work-life balance or fat loss. Why is someone trying to lose fat if they have immense amount of work in this quarter? It doesn't make sense. You're just putting more pressure on yourself. Or why are you trying to build a new business when this quarter you are looking to scale another business, like another existing business? Point being, the problem is poor planning or the inability to say enough is enough when it comes to short sprints. And I think that is where sustainability starts to fall apart. Because I think sustainability can be achieved. Again, balance is about sacrifice and trade-offs. Sustainability can be achieved if proper planning goes into place. Most people don't have a follow-up plan. Most people don't know when to say stop. Most people don't know when to say earning 6 figures is enough or earning 7 figures is enough, and they keep grinding. Most people don't understand that losing 10 kilos in 8 weeks is actually a lot. Why are we trying to push for 15? Be content with the 10 kilos. There needs to be a follow-up plan. There needs to be a hard stop. And the follow-up plan usually helps to take the edge off of things. Like a structured holiday or a planned weekend that you don't work, or a diet break, or a deload. I'm just using these analogies because I'm familiar with them in my own career and my own life. If we look at something that I am quite familiar with, powerlifting and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for example, there's always going to be a deload week or a chill week where you just allow the body to recover. It's planned. It's a hard stop to tell me that it is time to just relax and chill out. Just so that I'm able to push really hard again in the next phase. From experience, these things are magical. It doesn't feel like anything in the moment because you feel like, why am I slowing down? Like I said before, a couple, 10, 15 minutes ago in this podcast, it feels like that there is no instant return to pulling back. But the magic happens when you recover. The analogy I like to use is a phone. A phone. And if anyone owns a phone, you know that a phone is an amazing piece of kit. It allows you to do many, many things. And the battery life on these things are crazy these days. At some point though, we need to charge this phone. Here's something to the madness of trying to find balance in your life and using the phone as an analogy. When you use your phone constantly, you use it, at some point you need to charge it. The battery drains. It's like life. You work, your battery drains, you need to charge it. You need to schedule a time to charge it. Similar to life, you need to schedule your off-ramps, you need to schedule your breaks, your time offs. As parents, you need to schedule times where your kids are just not working hard, you just need to play, work hard, play hard, right? Without proper planning, your phone will just drain itself. You have to plug it in, and you have to wait a long time for it to charge. But, and I know this from talking to a lot of people, even myself included, when you sparingly or sporadically charge your phone throughout the day, your phone battery is always topped up. If we just sort of expand this example to life, the sporadic charging of a phone and just leaving your phone there to charge is basically like having a weekend off. It's not like you need to take a long-ass holiday, you're just taking a weekend off. So you can come back on the Monday to work a little bit harder. In diets, for example, and I see this a lot in the clinical setting, people who don't value diet breaks end up putting themselves in this under-eating situation, developing things like red S symptoms or low energy availability, where the hormones actually start to be impacted negatively as a result of trying to lose weight, which sucks. And so, just to put it out there, I know this is not necessarily a full bore episode on red S and low EA, but when you go through a fat loss phase, my general recommendation is always to match the same amount of time to not be in a fat loss phase. So if you're fat lossing for 8 weeks, ideally you take another 8 weeks to just relax and not be in a deficit. It helps a lot with your recovery and metabolism and all that good stuff, psychologically as well. Analogies again. For example, if your kid learns to start to drink juice with a straw from a box, without proper control and without proper timing and guidance, they drink too quick, they choke, and they vomit. Right? That's us when we don't have a timeline. I know that might be a bit of a reach. I'm really overreaching with that analogy there, but if we're going too quick all the time and we don't understand when to stop, if we don't have a hard stop or a scheduled time to take a break, we basically end up like kids who just go crazy at the juice box and then they go and then they vomit, right? And then now you have to repair the damage. You have to mop up the vomit. You have to console a child because they're crying because they don't know what's happened. And that's analogous to us burning out. All of a sudden we don't realize that we are burning out because we have just taken too much time, going too hard, too quick, because it feels good in the moment. We are achieving results. And then we just crash. We need clear lines. We need to tell ourselves we have this much to go before we take a break. We need to schedule those breaks, and we need to be strict with ourselves as adults, parents, kids, and with other aspects of life to ensure that we have strict rules. Or at least the strict rules on when to say stop. You don't have to stop forever. Again, the brick is pretty dense, right? The analogy, the brick is pretty dense. But there needs to be at some point a boundary to be set to take a chill pill. The more of a go-getter you are, the more time you probably need to recharge. Again, unless if you're David Goggins. The phone thing again. If you leave your phone to charge uninterrupted, it's going to charge a lot quicker, as opposed to if you try to charge your phone while using it, it's going to charge a little bit slower. And now that I'm 30 minutes into this episode, honestly, like, a lot of these advice is well and meaningful, but it's always very hard to implement, and it's something I have to learn the hard way. And it's funny because I'm using this podcast as a way to kind of advise you kids and obviously dear listeners, kids being the intention of this podcast for you guys to listen to this when you grow up, maybe. But you have to learn the hard way, funnily enough. You have to learn to burn out, ironically. I can sit here and tell you to ways to avoid burnout and schedule breaks, and that's how you find balance, sacrificing certain things in order to achieve that balance. But at some point you have to feel the pain a little bit, feel the sting. Balance is not about trying to keep everything at equilibrium. It's about sacrifice. Some people find that working 6 days a week and taking a day off is perfect balance, and that's amazing. Some people find they need to work a full year and take a full year off. I have a client who actually worked a full year and took a full year off. All power to them. And maybe speaking to others who are maybe not like myself, but going through the process of finding ways to not burn out, or maybe you are at a point in life where you're not too sure of your direction of life and therefore you're kind of burning out from life in itself. Sometimes talking to someone or just getting a different perspective could help. And sometimes talking to your parents might be awkward too, because they're your parents ultimately, right? And I get that. And that's why sometimes I don't talk to my parents about my problems too. It's not like I don't want to tell them. It's like there's just something about, it's just some things you don't ask your parents, maybe for generational differences and stuff, right? So in the background, I've been creating this peer-to-peer coaching program. You can check it out in the link below. It is very much intended to be used as a way to allow like-minded individuals who understand that life isn't always perfect, life is actually pretty hard. I just want to find a lot of these people who find that life is hard, but they want to make it less hard to connect and to peer coach. I will be running it. I'm going to try to keep it very casual. There is no format to this type of coaching. It's more like a gathering of minds, sharing thoughts, struggles, differences, and coaching others as you would receive coaching or advice. And if coaching isn't a word you are familiar, it's just asking for help and getting advice from other people who might just be a couple steps ahead of you, who have maybe gone through what you've gone through. So if you are keen to check it out, what this all entails, it's The Forge. The link is down below. Check it out. See if you would like to be part of this community. Again, it's something very new. It's a very casual thing. I will be in there as much as I can to check in and share my struggles. And if anyone has struggles, I'd like to pitch advice as well. This is completely not health and fitness related. This is pretty much, I don't like to call it life coaching or guru coaching. I really hate that. I like it more so because it's peer-to-peer. Everyone is going through life with some struggles. I just want to create a place that everyone can share their struggles and maybe share things that has worked, either from mindset or practicality. So if you'd like to check it out, link's in the bio. But I've been yapping for close to 40 minutes now. I'm kind of going to wrap this up. In summary, I think balance is not something that's in the middle. Balance is finding a way to balance out the scale by having short, or maybe a lot, of slowing down. And the analogy or the metaphor here is the brick. It's very dense. To balance out, so to speak, the amount of work that you would do, which is like the feathers. Some people will find that the scale doesn't always sit right in the middle. Sometimes the scale tips on one side to the other. And as long as you find that that is feeling balanced, as long as you feel that life is balanced, it doesn't matter what others say that your life is not balanced. The most important thing is that you find a balance that you can call mine. That's the most important thing. Whether it's in family, fitness, life, career, whatever it might be. So that's all I have today. I'm going to try to do more of this sort of like brain dump formats. Hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully you enjoy this style. And thank you for your support if you've listened to this far into the episode, and I'll see you in the next one.